Hello everyone. We are in the middle of a pandemic that has changed the way we live our lives. It has made us devise innovative ways to continue doing our jobs while staying safe and healthy. As pediatricians, we have the responsibility to safeguard the lives of children, and resuscitation is an extremely rewarding procedure to that end. Today, we shall be discussing the challenges that we need to make to our resuscitation protocols to continue saving children while protecting ourselves from exposure to COVID-19. We will be discussing how cardiopulmonary resuscitation is an aerosol generating procedure, the barriers to performing effective CPR in context of pandemic, being prepared for the modified CPR, personal protective equipments that we require while performing CPR, proposed placement of personals in the resuscitation room, strategies to prevent aerosol generation during CPR, and the relevant changes to the cardiac arrest algorithm. There are no two ways about the fact that CPR saves life. The element of doubt arises from the possibility of aerosol generating procedures while performing it. As is clear from this image, intubation exposes the laryngoscopist to an extreme degree of aerosol shower, and if proper precautions are not taken, it creates an extremely high risk for infection. All international and regional guidelines unanimously agree upon the aerosol generating potential of the CPR procedure. During bag and mask ventilation, the expiration is open to air and carries with it the viral particles, categorizing it as high risk procedure. Even chest compressions have the potential to generate aerosols, exposing the provider to a very high risk of contacting COVID-19. COVID-19 poses a multi-pronged challenge to CPR providers. The sudden onset of pandemic put up a huge challenge in terms of availability of adequate PPEs. The social distancing norms puts a limit to the number of persons that can be available inside a room. HEPA filters normally used for ventilators were repurposed to be used with bag and mask as well as bag and tube ventilation. Innovative solutions to limit aerosol spread such as transparent sheets and plastic barriers for intubations were devised. As bag and mask ventilation causes higher aerosol generation than bag and tube ventilation, early intubation was recommended by some. But preparedness is the key to proper application of any protocol. Adequate PPE need to be provided at all stations which are likely to be exposed to direct patient contact. As COVID-19 is known to be spread via aerosol and airborne spread is postulated, it is better to err on the safer side and follow all airborne precautions as per hospital protocols. The resuscitation trolley should be well equipped. Special devices that may help in limiting aerosol exposures such as video laryngoscopes, HME filters, cuffed ET tubes in various sizes, supraglottic devices etc. may need to be procured if funds permit. There should be pre-made checklist and these trolleys need to be checked periodically. Every institute may have different guidelines for different levels of expected exposure. The minimum requirements for any aerosol generating procedures are a fluid resuscitant gown, non-permeable gloves, FFP2 or N95 respirator along with a face shield. Overalls or hazmat suits may not be available at all places of care. Whenever available, they are ideal while managing COVID-19 positive patients. This picture is a representative image of the NHS UK recommendations for personal protective equipments. With the social distancing norms, there is usually a limit on the number of personals that can safely work inside a room without additional risk of exposure. Clear roles should be allocated to the available members and multitasking may be need of the hour. Standby personals may be placed outside the resuscitation room to replace a team member or assist when needed. The door to the room should ideally be kept closed. Loudspeakers and telephone systems should be used. The Western world may have the luxury of greater provider-patient ratio, as is evident from this upper figure. We may use our existing systems judiciously by clear role allocation and robust protocols. Bag and mask ventilation is an emergency life-saving procedure with a high risk of aerosol generation. Using a heat and moisture exchanging filter with bacterial and viral filtering properties reduces the infective load of the expired air. It can be placed between the ambu bag and the mask, as seen in this picture. A tight seal should be maintained with the mask over the patient face. A two-person team may be needed for this, one person to hold the mask tightly and another to ventilate. Intubation should be done earlier with a cuffed endotracheal tube. As video laryngoscope allow the provider to be farther away from the patient and away from the direct line of aerosol exposure, they should be used whenever available. If intubation is expected to be delayed, supraglottic airway devices may be used over prolonged bag and mask ventilation. Several innovative ideas have been tried to limit aerosol exposure while intubating a patient. A transparent acrylic box is the most widely used model, but recent data suggests some limitations with this technique, like the presence of a learning curve and doubts over effectiveness. A transparent sheet may also be used in its place with appropriately sized leak-proof holes for passing the opening of the ambu bag. It is to be noted here that all these measures are to be taken in addition to the recommended PPE as per institutional guidelines. The most experienced provider and the most likely to succeed should be the one to perform intubation, and that is to be done in the shortest possible time. No patient should be denied CPR for the fear of contracting COVID-19. Some CPR is always better than no CPR. If airway optimization is being done to limit aerosol spread, compression only CPR may be started. Once donned with appropriate PPE, CPR needs to be done as per the existing PALS guideline. Although not available at most places, external compression devices are an option to limit the exposure to personnel, as shown here. Automated external defibrillator allow us to deliver the shock while maintaining a distance to limit the aerosol exposure. They may be used whenever available. Manual defibrillators are an alternative. Children who suffered a witness collapse and are more than 1 year of age and are known to have a pre-existing cardiac condition are more likely to have a shockable rhythm. American Heart Association has updated a slightly modified version of the cardiac arrest algorithm to include these recommended changes. The first step is to don the recommended PPE and limit the number of personnel in the room. While providing bag and mask ventilation, use an HME filter and intubate early using a cuff tube. A non-rebreathing face mask may be used instead of a spontaneously breathing patient. Chest compressions should be paused while intubating. In case of any delay, a supraglottic device may be considered. Instead of providing bag and tube ventilation for long, we may connect early to ventilator, setting it to deliver 100% oxygen, appropriate rates, and turning off the trigger function, and optimum PEEP may be set in. The rest of the algorithm remains the same and there are no changes in it. So, to conclude, this pandemic has placed a huge challenge in form of healthcare providers providing resuscitation services to the children. There is a need to optimize the existing infrastructure and manpower. The changes made to existing CPR protocols are primarily aimed at limiting aerosol generation as well as exposure of personnel to them. We need to be prepared with adequate supplies of PPE and other devices to limit aerosol spread. Bag and mask ventilation generates more aerosols than bag and tube ventilation. thus making a case for early intubation. Lastly, no child should be denied CPR by ensuring robust protocols and appropriate training. Thank you very much.